Well, now I want to turn to Father Ron Walters, who is going to show us how he uses Inkscape. I had never heard of it until he mentioned it, and he showed some of the windows and mullions that he made using it. And I thought, geez, you got to have him on the show to show this. It's just beautiful work. So, Father Walters, thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for letting me show this. You've seen Phil Edholm showing you how to use PowerPoint to create things. Many of the techniques that he's shown can also be used in other programs, such as Inkscape. So some of this may be repetitive in the sense that you've seen this done by Phil before. Inkscape is a free program. You can download it from the internet. I'm sharing my screen here. It is very easy to use, but it does have a learning curve. Many new programs that you use will have a learning curve to it. So what I'm going to do is basically talk a little bit about what is Inkscape, where to download the free software program. I'm going to talk about some of the very basics of Inkscape, such as magnifying and shrinking the work area, how to use shapes like Phil has shown you with PowerPoint, and how to import or bring in something. I'll be using Paul Eggery's one of the designs that he used for this garage that we built, the gasoline station. I'll also be showing you how to raise and lower the objects in Inkscape so that you can place one object on top of another. How to crop an image, that basically you want to take a piece of an image, and in this case it'll be the window and with the mullions, and then rotating and duplicating the images. These are all very basic things. Phil has shown this with PowerPoint, and so I'll be showing it to you here with Inkscape. Inkscape is a free drawing program, and it's a design program. It is like Microsoft PowerPoint or Corel Draw or Adobe's InDesign and other such programs that you can find on the internet. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. However, you can offer a donation to the people who created it. It does not automatically update as time goes on. New features are added and mistakes or problems are corrected. So you have to reinstall it periodically to get the latest version or to correct something. This happened to me. I downloaded the Inkscape about a year ago, or maybe even more than that. And I was having terrible problems using it because my computer was slow, and often the pointer on my mouse would change and I couldn't change it back. So I downloaded a more recent version of it, and it cured many of the problems I was experiencing. The updates are free also, but you usually have to reinstall them. Using software that you've never used before requires a kind of learning curve, especially if it's not something you've ever used before. Things are in different places, and a lot of that's because PowerPoint, Corel Draw, Adobe InDesign, and other such programs are licensed, and you have to pay to use them. And therefore, they protect their rights. And so you have to learn that things are in different places and under different tabs on the program. The more you use it, the better you will become in its use. As Paul was showing you with PowerPoint, I never knew PowerPoint could do all of that. If I did, maybe I wouldn't have used Inkscape, because I already have PowerPoint for presentations, and PowerPoint is what you're seeing on the screen. What you learn can be transferred to other software programs. So putting a shape on the work area is the same in PowerPoint, except that you do it a little differently to do the same thing. The URL for Inkscape is shown there. It's www.inkscape.org. And I'll show you then how to download the file. This is what it looks like on the screen when you go to inkscape.org. And what you're going to do is look for the download word and look for the current version. You can see the purple arrow there. And then down below, you can also see a second way to download it. If you don't use the download word, you can also download now. And it will start downloading on your screen. There are different versions of Inkscape according to the kind of computer that or the operating system that you're using. If you're using Linux, there's a version for that. If you're using Windows, there's a version for that. If you're using the Mac OS operating system, there's a version for that. So you have to download the particular version for the operating system that your computer has. I have, as you can see on the screen, I have Mac, so I've downloaded the Mac version. Remember where your computer downloaded the file, that is the installation file. Often, for many computers, automatically it wants to download it in a subdirectory called downloads. And that's usually where it goes to do so. If you want it to download to a different place, you have to tell it where to download it. But remember where that is, because you're going to have to go there and click on the file or double click on the file, depending upon your operating system, in order for it to install. So you navigate to that folder on your computer and follow the directions for your operating system to install the file. After you install the file, start it up. If this seems too simplistic for many of you, that's okay. It's for some people, they've never used this kind of a program before on their computers. And so this may be a way to that you can later do this. I will give Phil this set of slides from a PowerPoint so that it can be uploaded to the Newscape, Nutrax Modeling website, and you can download this particular set of slides to show you exactly how to do things. When you start up Inkscape, this is what you get: a page with a white sheet of paper. You're not going to do most of your work on the white sheet of paper. The white sheet of paper that you see there is what will print, but you can work offline in the areas to the right or to the left. In order to give yourself more working room, you'll need to shrink down that piece of paper and magnify, in a sense, the work area that you want to work on. In this particular case, after installing Inkscape, the size of paper is not 8.5 by 11, which is our American way, standard paper size. In this particular case, I discovered later, this is A4, which is the European, and for most of the rest of the world, the standard size of paper. So if we're going to print anything, we're going to have to change the paper size of that printed paper. It's very large in the center of the screen, and the work area is not just that piece of paper, but the area around it. Think of the piece of paper as what you're going to print, the final work print that you're going to do. So let's do a couple of things before we put anything on that paper. First, let's make sure that we are working with the paper we want to print on. In the In the program, you're going to find, you need to look for document properties. Often it depends on your operating system. More often than not, you're going to find the document properties either in edit or in file. In the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you see the words file and edit. Look for document properties and click on it, and you'll get this little box that pops up on your screen. What you want to do is look at display. And you can see under the word display the word format, and it says A4. It also tells you to the right of that the kind of measurement that's on the screen. And this is just after downloading and starting the program. So if you want to work in inches or in millimeters, you have to decide to tell Inkscape to do that. So the first thing I wanted to do was change the format of the piece of paper I'm going to print to our standard letter size, which is 8.5 by 11. I also want to work in millimeters. For me, that's the easiest way to work in anything in HO scale. I have a very difficult time seeing the inches on the HO scale ruler, and to be able to tell what's 4 inches instead of 3 inches and so on. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the paper size to letter, which is what you've just seen. It says US letter in the format area on the screen. You've also seen that I've left it as millimeters, but you can change that to inches if you wish by pressing that triangle that points downward. If you press on that, you can change it to inches. To increase the size of the paper displayed on your screen, hit the plus key. Now that's either, if you have a keyboard that doesn't have the numbers on the right, you'll need to use the shift key and change, the plus will raise and magnify your screen. If you want to decrease the size, you use the dash key, which is to the left of the plus and equals key on your keyboard. If you have the numeric keypad on your keyboard, you can use the plus and the minus keys to do that. Use the arrow keys to raise or lower the paper on the screen, or you can use the slider at the right on the bottom of the screen to move the paper left or right. So you can, the purple arrow is pointing to the slider at the bottom of the screen. If you're using a Macintosh, an OS type of operating system, you can actually use the mouse that comes with your Mac, and you can move your fingers left or right or up or down to change the position of the paper on the screen. Most often what we want to make is composed of basic shapes. So let's look at some basic shapes in Inkscape. On the screen, there are some things in a column on the extreme left of your screen, of your working area. At the top of that column is a box. With your mouse, click on that box. So you can see, can you see my cursor moving here? Is that visible to you? Okay. You can see that this column has shapes in it, all kinds of various things. What we're going to do is click on this little red box over here, which will create a box. When you click on it and pull it down or to the right, you create a box. You can color the box by using the colors at the bottom of the screen. You can see a whole lot of different colors, various shades of the colors. The very basic colors are on the left. It begins with black and goes to white, and then has maroon and red and a kind of a blue-green or gray-green, yellow, and so on. Those are the basic colors. But as you go to look around at the bottom of the screen to your right, you can see all the different particular kinds of colors. You can also change the color. You see on the extreme lower left, fill and stroke. The color you select will picture there, but also color the box on the screen. You can change the size of the box by using the width and the height numbers in the upper central of your screen. Right now, you can see that box is 97 millimeters wide by 63 millimeters tall. You can change those numbers. If you press the padlock where the yellow arrow is, when you change the width, the height changes automatically, or when you change the height, the width changes automatically to maintain that particular aspect ratio, which is what Phil talked about in PowerPoint. If you leave it unlocked, when you change the width only changes. When you change the height only changes. This is convenient when you're trying to maintain a certain shape, but you want to increase its size in some way. There is, underneath the symbols on the extreme left, you can see a circle, which does the same thing. When you create a circle, it will change the width and height. If you want the circle to be exactly a circle, you lock the aspect ratio to make sure that the width and height are exactly the same. And then you can increase or decrease the size of your circle accordingly. But you can also create shapes of different sizes by using the third symbol, which is a pentagon here. And you can change the number of points on that by increasing the number where the purple arrow is showing. So if you want a hexagon, excuse me, I thought I was going to sneeze there. If you want a hexagon, you can change it to 6. If you want an octagon, you can change it to 8. And as Phil showed you with that buzzsaw type of Missouri Pacific symbol, you can change it to any number you want to have the exact number of points on your object. So I changed it to a 6 and I created a 6-sided, a hexagon. Again, changing the width and the height to exactly the same numbers creates the perfect hexagon with all angles and sides being the same. You can also rotate your object by double-clicking the object, and you can see that the arrows around the side of the object, you remember on the last one, they were vertical and angled or horizontal. On this one, you can grab one of those and rotate the object. So you can see it's slightly off kilter here, but if that's what you need for your particular object, you can do that. I want to create windows for that gas station model that Paul Egri gave us designs for. The front windows and the side windows have such delicate and fine mullions that trying to recreate them by drawing them with your free hand or by using plastic or wood might be difficult to do. And so I'm going to import Paul Egri's design and select part of it to create the windows that I want to create. So I'm going to show you how to import something into Inkscape. This is done under File at the top of the screen, the top left of the screen. You open File and click on Import, which is what this screen shows. What this will do is go to your computer and say, well, what is it you want to import? So I did that, and I went to the subdirectory where this gas station designs that Paul created are located. And you can see in this particular, in my OS operating system, when I click on a file, it shows me a miniature of the file. Unfortunately, OS operating system isn't always able to give you a look at the actual file to see if you've got the right one. It will do this for PNG type files. So you can see I clicked on Service Station Revision -1, and it gives me a picture of that. And this is the front of the gas station. I don't need to create those windows because the front of the gas station will already be there. All I'm going to do is put clear plastic behind the front of the station. I believe the one I picked is the Service Station Revision _2 PNG. And when you click on the file, you get a conversation box, a text box that asks you, how do you want to import this? The image is coming in dots per inches from a file, and the image rendering mode is smooth. I don't want it blocky, and I don't want none or auto. So this is what it's showing me immediately. If I click on the word, the little box to the left of don't ask again, it will never ask me how to import the file. Well, I want to be able to tell it exactly how I want to import the file. I want to embed it, not link it, but to embed it in this particular drawing. So I'm going to click on the word OK, and this second file imports. And here's what you get when you import it. I clicked on it then because I want to do something with that picture. But you can see that what I'm going to look for is at the purple arrow. It's actually not. I'm going to use the window to the left of that has the dark blue or the blue-gray colors in it. But this is what we're going to try to take that little window out of this picture and put it in on the piece of paper to print. So I need to know how to crop this picture. I only want to use the side windows for the garage. So I have to somehow crop the image. That is, I have to pull out the window from the rest of the plan. There are several ways to do this in Inkscape. I'm going to use the one that I'm most familiar with, or that I learned from the guy who does the N-scale model of Chandwell in England. He's the one I learned all of this from by watching his videos on YouTube. This is perhaps the hardest thing you may have to do or want to do in Inkscape. There are three ways. You can use a shape to crop the image. You can trace around the part you want to crop, and this may be more what you need to do if you have an irregularly shaped image that you want to crop out of a picture. Or you can block out everything but the piece you want to save. We will use the rectangle to crop the image of the window. So I created another box, like I did at the very beginning. So it's pink right now. I don't want the pink, and I want a border around it so I can see what I'm doing. If you don't put a border around it, it may be difficult to grab the box to move it, and which is what you want to do. You want to move it over the area that you want to crop. If I move it right now, that box will disappear behind the plan. So I have to lower the plan or raise the box so that it will sit on top of the plan. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the box disappear, the pink disappear. And at the lower right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a red X. This is no fill. I don't want the box to be filled. So I'm going to click on that to do that. I also need to create the black line around the box so I can grab it to move it. To do that, I have to use the image at the top of the screen here. I have to do something in order for me to see that. You'll see something called fill and stroke. This is under the object tab at the top of the screen. I want to change this object, the line around it. Right before it had no line around it, and I want to create a line. So I went to object, fill and stroke, which started the dialog box to the right. You'll see the fill and stroke has a blue line under it, and I clicked on the word stroke paint. When it began, it was where the purple arrow is now, was on the X. And I clicked on the blue, which is the solid fill. So the stroke around the box will now be solid and will be black. And in order to create the black, I made sure that the HLS, which is actually, I changed that to RGB, will be 0, 0, 0. In other words, there's no color in this, and it creates a black line. Now I'm not, oh, I guess I have to click on it. All right. So we have to raise and lower the objects in order to move that box over the plan that Paul created. In most drawing programs, it is possible to lay things on top of each other. Items in a drawing program are on top as the default position in the drawing. If I draw a shape and then move it to the area of another object, it might disappear behind the other object. So I need to make sure that the older object is lower than the new object I have created. To do that, you click on Object that you want to raise or lower, and then use Object in the upper tabs and look for lower to bottom. So I'm going to force Paul's plan to the bottom of my work area so that the box I created, and you can't see it here because of the dialog box, it's going to be then on top. So I clicked on lower to bottom, which lowered Paul's plan. Then I clicked on the box I created, which is the black outlined box. I'm going to raise it to the top to make sure that it's going to be on top of the plan that I'm using. I then moved it over to the area where I want to create the window. That line around that box, though, was pretty thick. So I want to make it a little thinner in order to be a little more accurate about where I'm going to place that box by changing its shape. So I used in fill and stroke, in the upper right-hand corner here, I used the stroke style to change the width of the object, of the line around the box to 0.5 millimeters. If you look at the picture, you can see that things are pretty small. So I think I need to increase the size of my work area so that I can see a little better what I'm doing. Maybe you guys have better eyes than I do, but I have to change that size. So what I've done is magnified the screen by using the plus key on my keypad, on my numeric keypad, or the plus key on the key, what do you call it, where the numbers and letters are. I also changed the color to red so that I can see that outline a little better. And I've changed the size of the box to fit exactly around the window that I want to crop out. So I've placed it exactly on top of the piece that I want to save. In order to, now we're going to crop this image, we're going to take that window out of the drawing and we're going to place it on top of the paper that I want to print. To do that, we have to clip it. So I go to Object, Clip, and Set Clip to do that. I clip, you saw in the previous one that I had the red outlined. So it's already selected. Then I held down the Shift key and clicked on Paul's drawing so that both of them are selected. And that's what's in this picture. You can't see, and you can see a little dashed line around the window, and you see that the arrows are all around Paul's drawing. That means that both of these have been selected. I then went to Object, Clip, and Set Clip. When you press the word Set Clip, this is what happens. You get just the window, which is exactly what I wanted. Now I have to move that window onto the paper that I want to print, but I also need 2 copies of it, so I need to duplicate it as well. It's also on its side. I would like it to be vertical. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to cut these out of the paper, out of a label anyway, so I could leave it horizontal, but for the sake of instruction here and showing how to rotate the item, I'm going to change it to vertical instead of horizontal. So the next thing I have to do is rotate it. So you do Object, and in this particular case, I need to rotate it counterclockwise so that it looks like the mullions are a T, the letter T. So I hit rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. And this is what happens. It gets rotated. It doesn't change the size at all. The size remains exactly the same. And that's exactly the same size as Paul's plan. I also need to duplicate this to make 2 windows because I have 2 sides that have to have a window on it. So it depends on your operating system how you duplicate it. In Inkscape, you would hold down on the OS operating system for a Mac, you hold down the Command key and hit the D key on your keyboard. In Windows, you would hold down the Control key and hit C for copy. And this is what happens when you duplicate it. You have to move it, obviously. It's sitting right on top of the other window. So I use my arrow keys to move it to the right. Now I have 2 windows, which is what I want. But only one window is highlighted right now, so I need to click on holding down the Shift key and click on the original window so that when I move it over to the sheet of paper, I move both of them and not just one. So I held down the Shift key, clicked on the original window, and I moved it over. I also use the minus key to shrink down the piece of paper again so I can see the full sheet of paper. Now all I have to do is print this on a full size 8.5 by 11 label, and then I will cut that out then and use a clear sheet of acetate to mount it onto the acetate. Then I will use my X-Acto blades to cut out the colored areas where I want the clear panes. And I just cut straight across because you're not going to see the cut lines and the in HO scale. So I carefully pick off the colored areas, and I have my windows for my sides of my gas station. And that's basically how you do that. There aren't any more slides. This is what we'll print. So I can stop sharing. But that's how I created those windows, Jim. And it wasn't a very complicated thing. The learning curve was the most complicated part of this.
Well, I'm telling you, that's a fantastic window that you created. It really is. And when I first saw it, I thought, geez, I've got to see how that's done. Because, that's got to be the easiest thing I've seen done.
But you can have mullions that are 1/2 millimeter or less, and trying to create that in on a piece of paper with a pen and pencil and a ruler is really difficult to do. Or trying to find a piece of plastic or a piece of wood that fine is really difficult. If you're working in N scale, it's even more of a challenge. Exactly. And that's why this Inkscape program or PowerPoint that Phil Edholm showed you last week and the week before, that's where these programs come in very well. You put that on a piece of full-size label, which those aren't very expensive to buy a package of 50 of them or a package of 25. And you can actually continue to use that if you cut the paper across the top and just take that 1 inch or so out. You can continue to use that label over and over again to create many things. All kinds of labels, all kinds of windows that you might want to create. This guy who does Chandwell in England, I follow him on his YouTube channel, and he does all kinds of things in N scale. That's just amazing using Inkscape. For something that small, I go crazy trying to do it myself without this kind of a program. I don't have a follow-up on this. I thought about, I can't be with you next week because I have to be have to be on the road. But I thought about, I saw a chapel. It's called Capella del Sol, which is Spanish for Chapel of the Sun, that I'd like to create make a model of. And I basically used Inkscape to draw out the entire chapel. I taped it all together to see if it would work. And I can show you how I did that, but I can't do that for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But that shows you how to use at least Inkscape to create windows with very fine mullions.
We'll plan on you coming back in a couple of weeks, Father. Thank you so very much for tonight. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else did too.
Are there any questions?